The abandoned base. Everyone said the alien base on planet X-99 was dead. No signals, no power, no life. It had been floating in space for over 300 years, broken, silent, forgotten. But when Captain Jace Morgan stepped onto the cold metal floor, he knew right away something wasn't right. "Looks empty," said Lieutenant Blake, walking beside him in the dark hallway. Their boots echoed in the silence. Jace held up a scanner. The lights blinked red. "No life signs," he said, but then paused. "Wait, there's a faint energy spike. That's odd." Blake frowned. "Could be leftover power cells." "Maybe," Jace replied, but deep inside, he felt something strange, like the air itself was watching him. Their mission was simple. Get in, recover old alien tech, get out. The base belonged to a powerful alien race called the Velari. They had vanished long ago, wiped out in a war. Human command told them the place was safe. Dead. Nothing left but ruins. But Jace had learned not to trust command too much. The team split up to search. Jace walked alone down a dark corridor. The walls were tall, smooth, and glowing with old symbols. His light flickered. The air grew colder. He reached a wide door, massive, silver, and sealed shut. Suddenly, his scanner beeped again. "Another spike," Jace muttered. "Closer now." He touched the door. It opened on its own. Inside was a large room. It looked like a chamber, dusty, but clean. In the center were strange crystal pods, 5 of them, each one shaped like a coffin, glowing faint blue. Jace stepped closer, heart pounding. His breath slowed. Inside the first pod was a woman, tall, strong. Her skin shimmered with light. She wore armor that looked like it came from another world. Her eyes were closed. She was asleep, but not dead. Jace moved to the next pod. Another woman, and another, all dressed the same, all beautiful, all perfectly still. He stepped back, stunned. "Impossible," he whispered. "They said the base was empty." Suddenly, "Thuge," a sound behind him. He turned fast, weapon raised. No one. Then, a whisper. "Leave. Now. Human." Jace froze. "Who's there?" He called out, aiming his flashlight around the room. No answer. He stepped backward, right into someone's shadow. Before he could turn, a hand grabbed his neck. A cold blade touched his throat. A voice, strong and smooth, spoke behind him. "You should not be here." Jace didn't move, his mouth dry, his body tense. The blade lowered. He turned around slowly and saw her, the woman from the first pod, now standing before him. Tall, glowing, eyes like starlight, hair like black fire. Her armor shimmered as if it were alive. She held the blade but didn't strike. Jace stared in shock. You were asleep," he said. She didn't blink. "You woke us." "I didn't mean to. I thought." Everyone said this place was dead. She stepped closer. Her eyes never left his. "We are not dead," she said. "We were waiting." "For what?" he asked, voice shaking. She didn't answer. Behind her, the other 4 paws opened. More women stepped out, just as stunning, just as powerful. Each one stared at Jace with cold, curious eyes. One of them hissed, "A human. We should kill him." "No," the first woman said. "He is not like the others. He carries no hate." I sense confusion. "I'm Captain Jace Morgan," he said, slowly putting his weapon down. "I'm not here to hurt anyone. I was sent to recover tech." The first woman lowered her blade fully. "I am Zena, first commander of the Velari Queen's Guard. These are my sisters. We have been in stasis for centuries." Jace's heart pounded. "Why?" She looked at the walls, at the blinking lights that now came alive with their presence. "We were betrayed. In the last days of the war, our own kind turned on us. We were left here, frozen in time, forgotten. Jace stepped forward. But now you're awake. Zaina looked him in the eyes. Yes, she said softly. Because of you. Jace didn't know what to say. Just then, his radio crackled. Captain Morgan, come in. We're getting strange readings. Did you find anything? Jace hesitated. He looked at Zaina. She gave him a look, calm but full of warning. You must choose carefully now, human, she whispered. Your people will not understand, and some may come to finish what they started. Jace didn't answer the radio, because deep inside, he already knew his mission had just changed forever. Warrior Queens of the Void. Captain Jace Morgan stood frozen in the glowing chamber. Around him were 5 stunning female warriors, tall, powerful, silent. Their eyes shone like stars. Their armor pulsed with light, strange symbols floating across their shoulders, and every one of them was staring directly at him. The leader, Zaina, was the only one who had spoken so far. Her voice was calm but firm. She did not lower her blade. Not yet. You are not like the others, she said again, her tone testing. But you are still human. We remember what humans did. Jace swallowed hard. That wasn't me. That was a long time ago. One of the warriors stepped forward quickly. Lies, she hissed. Your kind destroyed our cities, burned our skies. You came with promises and gave us war. Zaina raised her hand. The other woman stopped but kept her sharp eyes on Jace. He slowly put his hands in the air. I don't want trouble. I just came for technology, old files, maybe weapons. That's all. I didn't even know you existed until 5 minutes ago. Zaina's eyes narrowed. And yet, you found us. Jace looked around the glowing chamber. The energy had returned to the room as soon as they woke up. The walls now pulsed with power. Strange alien machines clicked to life. Symbols floated in the air, moving gently like mist. Jace took a slow breath. How long have you all been here? Zaina finally lowered her blade. She looked up at the ceiling. Her voice turned soft, almost sad. 312 years, she said. We were the last of the Queen's Guard, the final shield of the Velari Empire. Another warrior spoke, her voice cold. We were betrayed by our leaders, by humans, by our own kind. We chose stasis over surrender. Zaina added, we were supposed to wake only when it was safe, but it never came. Jace frowned. So why now? Zaina looked at him. Because you touched the door. Jace blinked. That's it. I opened a door. Only someone with no hate in his heart could trigger the chamber, she said. Our ancestors built that lock. You passed a test without knowing it. Jace didn't know what to say. For once, his soldier training failed him. These weren't enemies, but they weren't allies either. Not yet. Suddenly, a voice crackled in his earpiece. Captain Morgan, report. Where are you? We lost your signal. Do you copy? Zaina tilted her head. That voice, more humans? Jace hesitated. Yes. They're my team. They're waiting outside. Zaina turned to her sisters. We are not ready to reveal ourselves. The cold one stepped forward. Let me kill them. Quiet. Fast. Zaina shook her head. No. Blood brings more blood. We will observe. Learn. Jace sighed in relief. Thank you. But Zaina gave him a hard look. Do not thank us yet. She walked past him, examining the chamber's walls. Her fingers glided over ancient carvings that lit up as she touched them. Jace noticed tears in her armor, marks of old battles, long forgotten. You said you were part of the Queen's Guard, he asked gently. What does that mean? Zaina stopped. She looked over her shoulder. We were born to protect the royal bloodline. We were trained in every weapon, every code, every language across 5 galaxies. Each of us is stronger than 100 soldiers. Another warrior, tall, silver-eyed, stepped beside her. But in the end, it didn't matter. The war came. The royals died. We were hunted like animals. Zaina added, so we went to sleep, waiting for a better world. It never came. Jace lowered his head. I'm sorry. A moment of silence passed. Then the lights flickered. Jace's radio buzzed again, this time louder. Captain Morgan, we're getting strange readings. Something is powering up inside that base. Do you see anything? He didn't answer. Zaina raised an eyebrow. You haven't told them about us. No, Jace said. Not yet. The silver-eyed warrior stepped forward. Why not? Jace looked her in the eyes. Because I don't know what they'll do. Zaina walked closer, searching his face. You fear your own people. I fear their orders, Jace said quietly. Command doesn't like surprises. If they find out about you, they might decide you're a threat, even if you're not. The cold one scoffed. Then you are weak. No, Zaina said softly. He is honest. Jace took a breath. Let me help you. I don't know how, but I'll figure it out. Zaina studied him. For a moment, there was silence again. Then she gave a small nod. We shall give you time, Jace Morgan. But remember, if your people attack us again, we will not run. We will fight. I understand, he said. Just then, one of the warriors gasped. Everyone turned. A red light blinked on the wall. A warning signal. The chamber doors shut tight. Zaina's face darkened. Too late. Jace grabbed his radio. Command, what's going on? A cold voice answered. Captain Morgan, you are now in a restricted zone. Fall back. Do not engage with the unknowns. This base is scheduled for cleansing. Jace's blood ran cold. Cleansing meant one thing. Destruction. Zaina stepped beside him, eyes glowing bright. You brought death with you, human. And Jace realized. He had just started a war he never wanted. The human betrayal. Captain Jace Morgan felt his heart race. The warning from command still echoed in his earpiece. This base is scheduled for cleansing. That word chilled him to the bone. Cleansing didn't mean retreat. It meant erase everything inside. Wipe it clean. Destroy the base. Destroy the data. Destroy whoever was unlucky enough to be inside. Zaina stood beside him, eyes glowing with anger. You lied to us, she said quietly. Jace shook his head. No, I swear I didn't know. I never thought they would do this. The cold warrior stepped forward again, gripping her weapon. He's one of them. We should have ended him when we had the chance. Zaina raised her hand. Enough. Let him speak. Jace turned off his earpiece. My orders were to scan the base, collect technology, and report. That's it. But clearly, command was hiding something. They knew about this place. About you. Another warrior, the youngest-looking one, whispered, so they lied to their own man. Zaina nodded. This is how empires fall, not from enemies outside, but from the rot within. Jace paced, his mind racing. He had to warn his team. He had to buy time. I need to get back to the surface, he said. Maybe I can stop them. You really believe they'll listen to you now? Zaina asked, folding her arms. I don't know, Jace said. But if I don't try, you all die. The warrior with silver eyes stepped forward. Then we come with you. Jace hesitated. They'll attack on sight. If they see you. We are not afraid of death, she said firmly. We've been waiting for it a long time. Zaina looked at Jace closely. You have a choice now, human. Stay with us and help, or leave and let your people finish what they started 300 years ago. Jace stared at the warriors. Each of them had pain behind their eyes, not just from battle, but from betrayal, from silence, from waiting too long to be remembered. They were survivors of a forgotten war. And now, Their second chance was slipping away. "I'm not leaving," Jace said at last. A flicker of something passed through Zaina's expression. Relief, maybe. But she hid it well. "Then we fight together," she said. Suddenly, the ground shook. A low rumble echoed through the walls. Jace looked at the ceiling. What was that? The youngest warrior ran to a control panel. Her hands moved fast over the glowing symbols. A dropship just entered the upper deck. Zaina clenched her jaw. "The human strike team is here." Jace grabbed his weapon. "Then we move. Fast." They ran through the ancient corridors of the alien base. Lights turned on as the warriors passed, as if the base itself was waking up to help them. Zaina led the way, moving like she had memorized every turn. Jace stayed beside her. "I need to speak to my second in command," he said while running. "Maybe I can convince him to delay the attack." Zaina gave him a sharp look. "And if he doesn't?" Jace didn't answer. They reached a small chamber near the surface exit. Jace activated his wrist screen. A shaky video feed appeared. His team had landed. 10 armored soldiers. One of them stood at the front. Commander Voss. Voss was a cold man, loyal to orders. No questions asked. Jace tapped into the comms. "Commander Voss, this is Captain Morgan. I'm alive. The base is not empty. Do not engage." There was silence for a second. Then Voss's voice came through. "Captain, we received your signal and your silence. We assumed the worst. We're here to complete the mission." Jace's heart sank. "There are living beings here. Velari warriors, not hostile unless provoked." Voss replied instantly. "Hostile or not, we have our orders. No witnesses. Secure the tech. Clean the site." Zaina watched Jace's face turn pale. "They won't listen." "No," Jace said. "They won't." One of the warriors, tall, muscular, eyes like ice, spoke up. "Let us strike first. We know this terrain. We can wipe them out before they set up." Jace raised a hand. "No, not yet." Zaina tilted her head. "You still believe in peace." "I believe in people," Jace said. "But sometimes they need to be shaken to wake up." He looked at the control panel. "Can you connect this base's systems to my signal? I want to show them something." The youngest warrior nodded. "I can try." A moment later, the ancient walls glowed with new power. A message was sent. Images of the warriors alive, standing proud. A silent message to the humans outside. "We are still here. We are not your enemy, but we will defend ourselves." Outside the base, Commander Voss received the footage. His team watched, stunned. One soldier whispered, "They're beautiful." Another said, "They don't look hostile." But Voss's face stayed cold. "These creatures fooled the last generation. They won't fool us. Prepare the charges." Inside, Jace's wrist screen blinked again. "They're arming the bombs," he said. "We have minutes." Zaina gave him a long, serious look. "Then we fight." For the first time, Jace saw her draw her second blade, a shimmering golden weapon that seemed to hum with power. She looked at her sisters. "We are not just queens of the past," she said. "We are warriors of the now. Let the void remember us again." The warriors let out a cry, sharp, strong, echoing through the halls. Jace lifted his weapon. His voice calm, steady. "Let's make sure Earth never forgets who you are again." Allies in the shadows. The dark halls of the Velari base pulsed with energy. For the first time in centuries, the ancient lights glowed with full power. Symbols danced across the walls. The air felt alive, electric, like the base itself knew that war had returned. Captain Jace Morgan stood beside Zaina, leader of the Forgotten Warrior Queens. Her golden blade shimmered softly in her hand. "Your people will not back down," she said quietly. Jace nodded. "They think you're a threat. They don't see what I see." "And what do you see?" she asked. He looked at her, tired, strong, but still proud. I see warriors who were betrayed, survivors who deserve more than to die in the dark. Zaina didn't reply, but her eyes softened. For the first time, she saw him not just as a soldier, but as something more. The strike team above had begun moving. Commander Voss led 9 heavily armed soldiers through the upper level of the base. Their suits glowed with red lights. Their helmets were locked tight. Their orders were clear. Locate the tech, clear all resistance, and activate the explosives. Alpha Team, move left, Voss said. Beta Team, with me. We go deep. None of them knew what waited in the shadows. Meanwhile, deeper below, the 5 Velari warriors stood in formation. Their armor now fully awake, powered by the base's core. Light flowed through their weapons like rivers of fire. Zaina turned to Jace. If we fight, there's no turning back. Your people will call you a traitor. Jace took a breath. Then I guess I'm done following orders. The youngest warrior, Lyra, smiled for the first time. A human with a spine. Maybe there is hope for your kind after all. Jace glanced at the others. If we just charge in, they'll shoot on sight. We need to hit fast, smart, before they know what's happening. Zaina nodded. We are queens of the void, not shadows. But today, we fight in the dark. Using old ventilation shafts, the team moved upward through the base. Jace led the way, crawling through narrow tunnels, using his knowledge of human tactics to guess where Voss would go. Lyra followed behind him, whispering softly, Do all human leaders destroy what they don't understand? Too many, Jace answered. The tunnel opened into a high platform above a large chamber. Below, 2 human soldiers stood guard near the power room. They scanned the area lazily, unaware. Jace signaled the warriors. Zaina and her team moved like ghosts. One blink later, thump, the guards were unconscious on the ground. No alarms, no gunfire, just silence. But silence didn't last long. On the next level, a drone spotted movement. Red lights flashed. Sirens wailed. Commander Voss turned to his team. Contact. They're alive. Prepare for full engagement. He raised his weapon and shouted, No mercy. The battle began. Flashes of blue and red lit the dark halls. Velari warriors moved like lightning, jumping off walls, dodging plasma bolts, striking with glowing blades. Their armor seemed to bend around the shots, protecting them with ancient shields. Jace fired his rifle beside them, taking cover and picking targets carefully. But he knew this wasn't his fight to lead. It was theirs. One soldier tried to flee. Lyra caught him with a spinning strike that disarmed him without killing. We don't have to slaughter them, she told Zaina. They're just following orders. Zaina hesitated, then nodded. Only those who choose to fight us to the end. Commander Voss was not one to retreat. He charged forward with 3 elite soldiers, firing nonstop. Zaina met him in the main hallway. You should have stayed in your grave, Voss shouted. Zaina raised her golden blade. You should have stayed in your shell. They clashed. Sparks flew. Metal rang. Voss was strong, but Zaina was faster, smarter. Her blade danced like firelight, slicing through his armor. Jace ran to help, but another soldier blocked his way. The hallway became a war zone. Smoke, screams, silence. Then, boom. One of the soldiers triggered a charge early. The blast shook the entire base. Jace fell to the ground. Dust filled the air. He couldn't see Zaina, couldn't hear anything. He crawled forward, coughing. Zaina, he called out. A hand reached out through the smoke and grabbed his wrist. It was her. She was hurt, bleeding, limping, but alive. Jace helped her stand. You okay? He asked. She nodded weakly, still breathing. Behind them, the other warriors regrouped. 2 were injured. One had taken a shot to the shoulder, but none had fallen. And Voss, gone. They retreated deeper into the base, sealing doors behind them. Jace patched up Zaina's wound with what little medkit he had. Her skin glowed faintly beneath the blood. "You saved me," she said, staring at him. "I wasn't going to leave you," Jace replied. "You're not like the others," she whispered. He smiled. "You already said that." "No," she said softly. "This time. I mean it." Later, in a quiet chamber deep below, Jace connected to the ship orbiting above. He sent one message, encrypted, short, urgent. "Velari warriors alive. Strike team compromised. Commander Voss may be dead. Do not send more troops. Request peace meeting. Urgent." He hit send, then turned to Zaina. "We bought time," he said. "But what comes next?" she asked. Jace looked up at the ancient ceiling, listening to the hum of a base that had survived death. "I don't know," he said, "but I'm staying. With you." Zaina stood beside him. "The shadows once buried us," she whispered, "but now they will protect us." And in the heart of an alien base, a human soldier and 5 forgotten queens waited in the dark, ready for whatever came next. The battle begins. The Velari base was no longer quiet. It breathed now. It roared. Alarms flashed through the ancient walls. The air smelled of dust, fire, and something older, rage. The old systems that had slept for 300 years were awake, just like the warrior queens who had once guarded this place. And now, they were preparing for war. Captain Jace Morgan stood at the center of the control room. He watched the blinking lights, the swirling energy, the maps that showed where every human soldier was moving. "They're regrouping," he said. "Reinforcements are coming from orbit. Heavy weapons, drones, maybe even air support." Zaina's face was calm, but her eyes burned with fire. "Then this is it," she said. "They've made their choice." Her armor shimmered as she walked across the room. Her sisters followed, their movements silent but powerful. Even injured, they moved like living weapons, trained for moments like this. But this wasn't just a battle. This was their return. Jace turned to the youngest warrior, Lyra, who had been watching the enemy movement with wide eyes. "They're closing in fast," she said. "Top deck. East Hall. 20 soldiers, maybe more." Jace frowned. "We need to split them up. Create traps. Force them to fight in narrow spaces." Zaina looked over. "You think like a Velari tactician." He gave her a half smile. "Guess I've been learning." An explosion shook the base. The eastern wall cracked. Stone and steel rained down. The first human squad stormed in, guns raised, armor glowing. "Contact," one shouted. "Target sighted. Fire." But before their weapons could lock on, a wave of glowing energy hit them. Boom. ZAP. Zaina struck first. Her golden blade sliced through a rifle, then through armor, stopping just short of the soldier's chest. She kicked him backward into the wall. Crack. Another warrior leaped from above, landing in the middle of the squad. Her blade spun in a deadly dance, disarming, disabling, dodging every bullet. Jace fired his own rifle, backing up his new allies. He wasn't just watching anymore. He was fighting. Up above, Commander Voss was still alive. His left arm was burned. His helmet cracked. But his rage had only grown stronger. "They turned Morgan," he growled into his comm. "He's fighting with them. Treat him as hostile." "Sir?" a soldier asked. "He's one of ours." "Not anymore," Voss barked. "He made his choice. Now we make ours." He raised a beacon, dark, pulsing, dangerous. A red signal shot into the sky. Jace saw it on the base's radar. "They're calling in an orbital strike," he said, voice sharp. Lyra's eyes widened. "They'll destroy the whole base, with all of us inside." Zaina stepped forward. "No, not today." She walked to the core chamber and touched the central crystal, a giant glowing structure that powered the base. It pulsed under her fingers, responding to her blood. "What are you doing?" Jace asked. Zaina didn't answer. She closed her eyes, and the base itself spoke. Humming. Thrumming. Alive. "Defense system," she whispered. "Activate the shield dome." The ancient walls responded. Energy shot through the ceiling and around the structure. From space, a dome of light appeared over the Velari base. Thick, glowing, unbreakable. The strike ships above locked their weapons, but their missiles bounced off the dome like pebbles. For the first time, Command hesitated. Back inside, the warriors and Jace pushed forward. They fought through narrow halls, using the enemy's confusion against them. Each room became a trap, each corner a battlefield. Jace kicked open a door and pulled a wounded soldier out of the way before a grenade exploded behind him. The soldier looked at him in shock. "You saved me." Jace nodded. "You don't have to die here. Drop your weapon. Tell the others." The soldier hesitated, then dropped his gun. Jace moved on. But in the main hall, the real storm was coming. Commander Voss himself charged through the smoke, holding a heavy plasma cannon. His armor glowed blood red. He saw Zaina at the far end and screamed, "You're a ghost. You should have stayed buried." Zaina stepped forward, blade in hand. "You are not the first to fear what you don't understand." They ran toward each other. The cannon roared. Blue fire flew across the hall. Zaina rolled, dodged, and came up swinging. Killang. Blade met metal. The force of the hit shook the ground. Jace ran to help, but Zaina shouted, "No, this is mine." The two leaders clashed again and again. Sparks flew. Blood hit the walls. Voss was brutal, but Zaina was pure precision. At last, she disarmed him, sending his cannon sliding across the floor. She held her blade to his throat. Voss laughed. "Go ahead. Kill me. You're no better than us." Zaina didn't move. She lowered her sword. "I'm not like you," she said. "That's why I win." Voss stared in shock. Behind him, Jace appeared, holding the very beacon Voss had used to call the strike. "I think Earth's done listening to you, sir," Jace said. "Transmission logs are already sent. Command knows everything." Voss's face fell. He had lost. Not just the fight, but the future. Later that day, the smoke cleared. The wounded were treated. The dead were honored. The Velari base remained standing, shields still glowing. Jace stood beside Zaina, both covered in dust and blood. "You didn't kill him," he said quietly. Zaina looked toward the stars. "We're building something new. It can't begin with another execution." Jace nodded. "You just changed everything." "No," she said. "We did." High above, in Earth orbit, Command reviewed the logs sent by Jace. The footage showed the warriors saving lives, fighting with honor, showing mercy, and it showed Voss giving the order to destroy them all, even after they tried for peace. Command was silent. Then, finally, "Send a message," one general said. "Tell Captain Morgan, we're ready to talk." In the shadows of a once-forgotten war, something new had begun. Hope. And Jace knew this was only the beginning. The last stand. Peace was near. For the first time in centuries, the Velari base stood tall, not as a forgotten tomb, but as a beacon of new beginnings. The dome shield still shimmered softly in the sky, reflecting the first light of a rising sun on the planet's surface. Captain Jace Morgan sat beside Zaina, their armor scraped, their bodies bruised, but both still standing. They had survived the impossible, an all-out assault from Earth's strike team. And they had won. But deep below the base, something old had started to wake up. Something even Zaina did not remember. "You think Command will honor your message?" Zaina asked, gently wrapping a bandage around Lyra's injured arm. Jace nodded. They sent a reply. "They want to talk. A neutral ship is on its way. They're calling it a peace mission." Zaina raised an eyebrow. Peace. From those who almost wiped us out again. Jace smiled faintly. I said the same thing once. But sometimes, one act of mercy changes everything. Lyra, sitting nearby, looked up. Then maybe you were our act of mercy. Suddenly, the floor trembled. A low rumble passed under their feet. Not like a bomb. Not an attack. It was deeper than that. Older. Jace stood up fast. Was that an earthquake? No, Zaina said slowly. This base was built into a stable mountain core. No tectonic movement. Another shake. Stronger. Lights flickered. Distant metal screamed as something shifted below. Zaina's face changed. That's not the ground, she whispered. That's the vaults. Long ago, the Velari Empire had created a weapon. A secret one. A final backup system deep below the base, buried so far down that even the Queen's Guard had no access. It was called the End Protocol. If the Queen's Guard ever failed, the system would finish what they could not, destroy all enemies. But the system didn't recognize peace, only survival. And now that it had awakened, it believed the Queen's Guard had fallen. And the enemy had won. In the control room, ancient symbols appeared on the screen. Zaina stared at them in horror. No, she whispered. It thinks we're dead. It's activating the purge. Jace leaned over her shoulder. What does that mean? It's going to destroy the entire region. Not just the base. The land. The air. Every living thing in 100-mile radius. Jace froze. How do we stop it? Zaina looked around. There's one way. We have to reach the heart chamber, deepest part of the vault. Lyra stepped forward. No one has gone that deep. Zaina nodded. We have no choice. Jace gritted his teeth. Then let's move. They took the old tunnels, dark, hot, filled with dust and strange pressure. The deeper they went, the more unstable the base felt. Walls cracked. Lights flickered. The air became thick with static. Lyra coughed. Something's wrong. Zaina's eyes glowed faintly. The purge system is alive. It's watching. Suddenly, a wall slammed shut behind them, trapping them. No, Jace shouted. It's trying to separate us. They ran faster, jumping over gaps in the floor, dodging falling debris. Glowing drones flew through the halls like metal insects, scanning, buzzing, blocking paths. It wasn't just a system anymore. It was a mind, and it believed they were intruders. At last, they reached the heart chamber. The door stood 20 feet tall, covered in glowing red warnings. Zaina placed her hand on the control plate. It rejected her. Why didn't it open? Jace asked. Zaina's face turned pale. It doesn't see me as Queen's Guard anymore. We were listed as terminated when we entered stasis. It thinks we're already dead. Jace stepped forward. Then maybe it needs someone else. No, she said. It only answers to Velari DNA. There was silence. Then, from behind them, one voice spoke. Maybe it'll answer to me. They turned. It was Kira, one of the quietest warriors, calm, steady, loyal. Jace frowned. Why you? Kira stepped forward and whispered, because I was not born like the others. Zaina's eyes widened. Kira. I was born inside this base, Kira said. My mother died giving birth in stasis. I was the only Velari child ever created from the gene forge inside the vaults. My body is tied to the base itself. She stepped to the door, placed her hand on the control plate. It glowed green. The door opened. Inside the chamber, a massive crystal pulsed in the center, a beating heart of pure energy. It hummed louder and louder, the whole room shaking with raw power. Red lights blinked. Purge in T-5 minutes. Zaina's voice cracked. Can we shut it down? Kira nodded. Yes, but only one person can connect with the core. Fully. Directly. And Jace asked. If I do that, I won't survive. Silence. No, Zaina said firmly. We'll find another way. There is no other way, Kira said gently. This is why I exist. To protect you. All of you. Tears welled in Zaina's eyes. You're my sister. I still am, Kira whispered, smiling. Even in death. She stepped into the light. Jace turned away as the chamber flooded with blinding energy. Zaina cried out. Lyra wept. And then, silence. The lights turned blue. The rumble stopped. On the screen, new words appeared. End protocol. Cancelled. Status. Peace recognized. Command code. Accepted. The base had changed its mind. Because of one final act of sacrifice. Hours later, they stood under the stars. The dome had lowered. The human peace ship landed slowly, white flags painted on its wings. Zaina stood tall in her armor, wind brushing her dark hair. Jace stood beside her, his heart heavy but proud. Lyra held a small crystal in her hand, Kira's memory core, saved in her final moment. The human stepped forward carefully, hands raised. A woman in uniform spoke first. We came to talk. Zaina nodded. Then talk, she said. But know this, we are not here to beg for space. We are here to claim our future. Jace smiled. And in the night sky above a once-forgotten base, peace finally began to bloom. New queens of the galaxy. A soft wind moved through the valley. The ancient Villari base, once dark and broken, now stood tall under the open sky. Its walls glowed a soft blue. No longer a tomb. No longer a weapon. Now, it was a monument. To survival. To peace. To what came next. 3 days had passed since the end protocol was stopped. The base no longer growled with danger. Instead, it hummed gently, its energy systems balanced, its defenses deactivated, its purpose changed. Captain Jace Morgan stood at the edge of the platform, watching human engineers walk side by side with Villari warriors. Tools in hand, no weapons drawn. They're working together, he whispered. Zaina stepped beside him, her dark armor still shining with energy. Her posture was proud, but her eyes tired. They still flinch when they pass us, she said. Jace smiled. Give it time. Peace doesn't happen in one battle, or one handshake. Zaina tilted her head, but it started with one human. He looked at her, and 5 warrior queens. Far below them, Lyra placed Kira's crystal core into a glowing chamber. The base recognized it instantly. A projection flickered in the air. Kira's face, smiling, speaking. Do not mourn me, the message said. My life was made for this moment. I am not gone. I am part of the stars now, and the stars still shine. Lyra turned away, eyes wet. But for the first time in her life, she smiled through her tears. Back on the surface, a high-ranking Earth diplomat arrived. Her ship was small, white, peaceful. She stepped out alone, no soldiers, just a quiet voice and a silver badge. Her name was Ambassador Rialin. She walked toward Zaina and Jace with her hands open. A respectful bow. No tricks. No threats. We're not here to control anything, she said. We're here to listen. Zaina raised an eyebrow. After 300 years of silence, Rhea nodded. Silence was our mistake. War was our shame, but we can still choose better. Zaina looked at Jace. He gave a small nod. We will speak, Zaina said. Inside the great hall, the last council began. Zaina sat in the center, flanked by her surviving sisters. On the other side, Rhea Lynn represented Earth. And in the middle, Jace. Not as a soldier, not as an outsider, but as the bridge between two worlds. We do not want pity, Zaina said clearly. We are not broken survivors. We are warriors, queens, protectors of life. Rhea nodded. And Earth does not seek to own you. We seek to learn from you. Fight beside you, if needed. Share knowledge. Share peace. There was silence. Then Zaina stood up. Then you must understand one thing, she said. We will never kneel again, not to any empire, not to fear, not even to memory. She raised her blade, not in anger, but in honor. We are Velari, and our time has returned. News spread fast across the stars. The Velari queens were alive. The lost warriors, the protectors, the ghosts of legend were back. And they had made peace with humans. Some races feared it, others cheered, and many watched in silence, waiting to see what this new alliance would become. But on Earth and Velari soil, something new began. A joint academy where human and Velari students trained side by side. A council where both species had equal seats and equal say. And a new class of ships, part human steel, part Velari crystal, patrolled the galaxy, not as conquerors, but as guardians. Jace stayed on the Velari world. He was offered a hero's medal, a return to Earth, a command of his own fleet. He said no to all of it. This is where I belong, he told them. With her. One night, under the glowing twin moons, Jace and Zaina walked through the quiet garden built atop the old war room. She stopped near a tall silver tree and placed her hand on the trunk. This was where I first saw you, she said. Weak, lost, surrounded. He laughed. Thanks for the memory. She turned, facing him. And now, you lead. Jace shrugged. I don't lead. I follow you. No, Zaina said softly. You walk beside me. They looked at each other. For a long time, they said nothing. Then, her fingers touched his hand. And in that quiet moment, under alien stars, the warrior queen and the human soldier shared a simple truth. They were no longer alone. Years passed. Children were born, half human, half Velari. Strong, curious, glowing with power and kindness. Stories were written. Legends were retold. And the name Jace Morgan was remembered not just as a captain, but as a peacemaker. As for Zaina, she was no longer just a queen of the void. She became something more, a mother of the new stars. And in the deepest part of the base, still glowing softly, Kira's voice whispered through the walls. The galaxy feared us, then forgot us. But now, they will follow us. Not because of war, but because of hope. New queens of the galaxy. A soft wind moved through the valley. The ancient Velari base, once dark and broken, now stood tall under the open sky. Its walls glowed a soft blue. No longer a tomb, no longer a weapon. Now, it was a monument. To survival. To peace. To what came next. 3 days had passed since the end protocol was stopped. The base no longer growled with danger. Instead, it hummed gently, its energy systems balanced, its defenses deactivated, its purpose changed. Captain Jace Morgan stood at the edge of the platform, watching human engineers walk side by side with Velari warriors. Tools in hand, no weapons drawn. They're working together, he whispered. Zaina stepped beside him, her dark armor still shining with energy. Her posture was proud, but her eyes tired. They still flinch when they pass us, she said. Jace smiled. Give it time. Peace doesn't happen in one battle, or one handshake. Zaina tilted her head, but it started with one human. He looked at her, and 5 warrior queens. Far below them, Lyra placed Kira's crystal core into a glowing chamber. The base recognized it instantly. A projection flickered in the air. Kira's face, smiling, speaking. Do not mourn me, the message said. My life was made for this moment. I am not gone. I am part of the stars now, and the stars still shine. Lyra turned away, eyes wet. But for the first time in her life, she smiled through her tears. Back on the surface, a high-ranking Earth diplomat arrived. Her ship was small, white, peaceful. She stepped out alone. No soldiers, just a quiet voice and a silver badge. Her name was Ambassador Rialin. She walked toward Zaina and Jace with her hands open. A respectful bow. No tricks. No threats. "We're not here to control anything," she said. "We're here to listen." Zaina raised an eyebrow. After 300 years of silence, Rhea nodded. "Silence was our mistake. War was our shame, but we can still choose better." Zaina looked at Jace. He gave a small nod. "We will speak," Zaina said. Inside the great hall, the last council began. Zaina sat in the center, flanked by her surviving sisters. On the other side, Rialin represented Earth, and in the middle, Jace. Not as a soldier, not as an outsider, but as the bridge between two worlds. "We do not want pity," Zaina said clearly. "We are not broken survivors. We are warriors, queens, protectors of life." Rhea nodded. "And Earth does not seek to own you. We seek to learn from you, fight beside you, if needed, share knowledge, share peace." There was silence. Then Zaina stood up. "Then you must understand one thing," she said. "We will never kneel again, not to any empire, not to fear, not even to memory." She raised her blade, not in anger, but in honor. "We are Velari, and our time has returned." News spread fast across the stars. The Velari queens were alive. The lost warriors, the protectors, the ghosts of legend were back. And they had made peace with humans. Some races feared it, others cheered, and many watched in silence, waiting to see what this new alliance would become. But on Earth and Velari soil, something new began. A joint academy, where human and Velari students trained side by side. A council, where both species had equal seats and equal say. And a new class of ships, part human steel, part Velari crystal, patrolled the galaxy, not as conquerors, but as guardians. Jace stayed on the Velari world. He was offered a hero's medal, a return to Earth, a command of his own fleet. He said no to all of it. "This is where I belong," he told them. With her. One night, under the glowing twin moons, Jace and Zaina walked through the quiet garden built atop the old war room. She stopped near a tall silver tree and placed her hand on the trunk. "This was where I first saw you," she said. "Weak, lost, surrounded." He laughed. "Thanks for the memory." She turned, facing him. "And now, you lead." Jace shrugged. "I don't lead. I follow you." "No," Zaina said softly. "You walk beside me." They looked at each other. For a long time, they said nothing. Then, her fingers touched his hand. And in that quiet moment, under alien stars, the warrior queen and the human soldier shared a simple truth. They were no longer alone. Years passed. Children were born, half human, half Velari. Strong, curious, glowing with power and kindness. Stories were written. Legends were retold. And the name Jace Morgan was remembered not just as a captain, but as a peacemaker. As for Zaina, she was no longer just a queen of the void. She became something more, a mother of the new stars. And in the deepest part of the base, still glowing softly, Kira's voice whispered through the walls. "The galaxy feared us, then forgot us. But now, they will follow us. Not because of war, but because of hope."